Sarah Chen Williams stood in front of the Grand Palmer Hotel's golden revolving doors, her reflection showing a confident woman in her early 40s wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. The morning sun bounced off the building's gleaming windows, and yellow taxis rushed past on the busy Manhattan street. As the CEO of Chen Tech Solutions, a company she had built from scratch over 15 years, Sarah was used to walking into high-end places. Her net worth of $4.2 billion made her one of the richest self-made women in America. Looking at her watch, she saw it was 9:15 a.m. She had plenty of time before her business conference at 11 o'clock a.m. The conference would bring together the biggest names in the tech industry, and Sarah was one of the main speakers. She had booked her hotel room 3 months in advance to make sure everything would go smoothly. As she entered the hotel's grand lobby, the marble floors sparkled under crystal chandeliers. The space buzzed with activity. Business people chatting in leather armchairs, bellhops moving expensive luggage, and tourists taking photos of the famous art pieces on the walls. Sarah waited patiently in the check-in line, answering a few quick emails on her phone. When it was her turn, she walked up to the front desk with her usual warm smile. "Good morning. I have a reservation under Sarah Chen Williams," she said, placing her ID and credit card on the counter. The desk clerk, a young man named Tom, typed on his computer. His friendly expression suddenly changed as he glanced at something on his screen. "One moment, please," he said, picking up a phone. "Mr. Whitman, could you come to the front desk?" A few minutes later, Richard Whitman, the hotel manager, appeared. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and an expensive suit. He looked at Sarah, then at his computer screen, then back at Sarah. "I apologize, Ms. Chen Williams, but I'm afraid there seems to be a problem with your reservation." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "A problem? I booked the executive suite 3 months ago. I have the confirmation email right here." She pulled up the email on her phone. "Yes, well," Whitman cleared his throat. "It appears our system has somehow lost your reservation. These technical issues do happen sometimes." As he spoke, another guest, a white man in a business suit, walked up to the desk next door and was quickly checked in without any problems. Sarah noticed this but kept her voice calm. "I see. And is there another room available?" "I'm afraid we're completely full due to the tech conference," Whitman said, not meeting her eyes. Just then, a white woman walked up to the other desk and easily got a room. "Perhaps I could suggest some other hotels downtown. There are some more suitable accommodations in that area." The meaning behind his words was clear. Sarah felt her chest tighten, but 15 years of business negotiations had taught her to control her expressions. She watched as 2 more white guests checked in without any issues. The lost reservation excuse was obviously a lie. Instead of causing a scene, Sarah picked up her ID and credit card. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Whitman," she said quietly. As she turned to leave, she noticed several hotel employees looking uncomfortable, and a few guests who had witnessed the scene were whispering to each other. Walking out of the hotel, Sarah pulled out her phone and called her assistant. "Janet, I need you to do some research for me," she said, her voice steady but determined. "Find out everything you can about the Grand Palmer Hotel, their finances, their management, their history, and get me in touch with our legal team." As her car pulled up, Sarah took one last look at the hotel. Many people would have gotten angry or given up, but Sarah Chen Williams hadn't become a billionaire by letting obstacles stop her. She had built her empire by turning problems into opportunities, and this would be no different. The hotel didn't know it yet, but they had just made the biggest mistake in their history. In her downtown office at Chen Tech Solutions, Sarah sat at her desk, reviewing the information her team had gathered about the Grand Palmer Hotel over the past week. The wall of windows behind her showed the New York skyline, but she barely noticed the view. Her mind was focused on the documents spread across her glass desk. Janet, her trusted assistant of 8 years, walked in with another stack of papers. "You need to see these, Sarah," she said, placing them carefully on the desk. We found something interesting in the hotel's history. The investigation had started immediately after Sarah's humiliating experience at the hotel. She had put her best people on it: lawyers, financial experts, and private investigators. What they discovered was worse than she expected. Look at these complaints, Janet said, pointing to a thick folder. Over the past 5 years, 37 people of color reported similar experiences at the Grand Palmer. All of them had confirmed reservations that were mysteriously lost when they arrived. She pulled out another document, but none of these complaints ever made it to the news. The hotel's management kept paying people to stay quiet. Sarah picked up another report, this one about the hotel's finances. The numbers told an interesting story. Despite charging over $800 per night and being in one of Manhattan's best locations, the Grand Palmer Hotel was struggling. Their debt had grown to $50 million over the past 3 years. The current owner is Theodore Palmer II, Janet explained, showing Sarah a photo of an elderly white man. He inherited the hotel from his father, but doesn't really run it. He leaves everything to that manager, Richard Whitman, the same man who turned you away. Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus, her head of security. He had been interviewing former hotel employees. The message read, "Found 5 ex-workers willing to talk. All confirm systematic discrimination. Have recorded statements. Meeting them again tomorrow." Just then, David Wong, Sarah's chief financial officer, walked into the office. He looked excited. "Sarah, we found something big," he said, opening his laptop. "The hotel took out 3 large loans last year. They're behind on payments for all of them. At this rate, they'll default within 6 months." Sarah stood up and walked to the window, thinking. The pieces were coming together. The Grand Palmer wasn't just a racist hotel. It was a poorly managed business hiding behind its fancy reputation. Their discrimination wasn't just morally wrong. It was hurting their bottom line. "There's more," David continued. "The hotel's occupancy rate has dropped 15% in the last quarter. Those negative reviews about discrimination are starting to affect bookings. Rich people don't like controversy, even if they don't care about the actual discrimination." Sarah turned back to her team. "What about their staff?" Janet pulled out another file. "Most of their workers are unhappy. The management is stuck in the past, refusing to change with the times. They don't even have proper diversity training. Some employees have been trying to report problems for years, but Whitman ignores them." Sarah walked back to her desk and picked up a photo of the Grand Palmer Hotel. It was a beautiful building with a rich history, but its current owners were destroying it with their prejudice and poor management. "Okay," she said finally, a plan forming in her mind. "Here's what we're going to do. David, create a shell company, something that can't be traced back to me. Janet, get our lawyers ready. We're not going to file discrimination complaints or make a public scandal." Her team looked at her curiously. Sarah smiled, the same smile she had given Whitman before leaving his hotel. "We're going to buy the Grand Palmer Hotel. But first, we're going to make sure we get it at a very, very good price." As her team left to start working on the plan, Sarah looked at the hotel's photo again. Theodore Palmer II and Richard Whitman thought they could continue their discriminatory practices without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were, and the lesson would come from the very woman they had turned away. Over the next month, Sarah's plan moved forward quietly but quickly. She sat in her office one evening, watching the sunset while her team gave her their latest updates. The golden light painted the city skyline orange as David opened his laptop to show her the progress. "The shell company is working perfectly," David said, pointing to some numbers on his screen. "We've already bought 40% of the hotel's debt through different banks. Nobody suspects these purchases are connected." Sarah nodded, remembering how she had created her company structure. She had named the shell company Phoenix Hospitality Group, a hint at her plans to make something new rise from the ashes of the old hotel. Janet walked in with fresh coffee and more news. "We found something interesting about Richard Whitman," she said, placing a folder on Sarah's desk. "He's been hiding losses from the hotel owner. The real financial situation is much worse than even we thought." Sarah opened the folder and read through the documents. The hotel was losing money faster than expected. They had even started taking deposits for future events, but using that money to pay current bills. A dangerous financial game that couldn't last long. "What about the other guests who were discriminated against?" Sarah asked, taking a sip of her coffee. Marcus, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We've contacted 15 of them. They're all willing to help. One woman, a famous surgeon, was turned away just last week. Same excuse. Lost reservation. She's ready to tell her story whenever we need it." Sarah stood up and walked to her whiteboard, where she had mapped out her strategy. The plan had 3 parts: buy the hotel's debt, gather evidence of discrimination, and prepare for the perfect moment to strike. "Show me the latest numbers from their bookings," she said to David. He pulled up another screen. "It's getting worse for them. Those negative reviews we found, they're spreading. Their booking rate for next month is down 30%. Plus, 3 big companies canceled their conference reservations after hearing about the discrimination complaints." Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a message from her contact at First National Bank, one of the hotel's main lenders. The message made her smile. "Perfect timing," she said to her team. "The hotel just missed another loan payment. The bank is getting nervous." She turned to David. "Make them an offer through Phoenix Hospitality. Tell them we'll buy their entire portion of the hotel's debt, at 60 cents on the dollar." David grinned. "They'll probably take it. Banks hate having bad loans on their books." Janet was checking her tablet. "Sarah, remember that charity event you're hosting next month? The one about supporting minority-owned businesses?" "Yes. What about it?" "The Grand Palmer Hotel is on the list of possible venues. Should I remove them?" Sarah thought for a moment, then smiled. "No, leave them on the list. In fact, schedule a meeting with Mr. Whitman to discuss hosting the event there. Let's see how he handles it when he realizes he needs my business." The irony wasn't lost on her team. The same hotel that had turned Sarah away would now be desperate for her event's booking fee. As her team left to carry out their tasks, Sarah looked at a new photo on her desk. It showed her 20 years ago, when she was just starting her first tech company. She had faced discrimination many times back then, but each time she had turned it into motivation to work harder and grow stronger. "One more thing," she called out to Janet. "Find out everything you can about the hotel's staff, especially the good employees who tried to stand up against discrimination. When we take over, they deserve to be rewarded for doing the right thing." The sun had set completely now, and the city lights were coming on. Sarah looked out at the bright dots of light, knowing that somewhere among them, Richard Whitman was probably sitting in his office, unaware that his world was about to change forever. The pieces of her plan were falling into place, and soon, very soon, she would make her move. 2 months had passed since Sarah started her plan. Now she sat in a large conference room at First National Bank, surrounded by lawyers and financial advisors. The morning sun streamed through the windows, but inside the room, the mood was serious. Richard Whitman and Theodore Palmer II sat across the table, looking worried. They didn't know that the woman they had turned away from their hotel was behind the company that now controlled most of their debt. Sarah wore a different hairstyle and glasses today, making sure Whitman wouldn't recognize her yet. "As you can see, gentlemen," David explained, pointing to the numbers on a large screen, "Phoenix Hospitality Group now owns 85% of your hotel's debt. You've missed 4 loan payments in the last 3 months. According to the loan terms, we can demand full repayment immediately." Theodore Palmer II, the elderly hotel owner, wiped sweat from his forehead. "But that would bankrupt us. We can't pay $50 million right now." Whitman looked desperate. "We just need more time. The hotel's reputation is dropping faster than its income," David interrupted. showing another slide. Your occupancy rate is now below 40%. You're losing money every day. Sarah watched silently as her plan reached its final stage. Last week, 3 more companies had canceled their bookings at the Grand Palmer after learning about its discriminatory practices. The hotel's cash reserves were almost gone. Janet, sitting beside Sarah, passed out folders to everyone. Phoenix Hospitality is prepared to make an offer, she said professionally. We will buy the Grand Palmer Hotel for $30 million. This is more than fair, given its current financial situation. Palmer looked shocked. But the hotel is worth at least $100 million. It was worth that much 2 years ago, David corrected him. But now, with your debts, damaged reputation, and dropping bookings, you're lucky to get this offer. Sarah finally spoke, keeping her voice different from when she had met Whitman. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, we'll demand immediate repayment of all loans. Palmer turned to his lawyers, who nodded grimly. They all knew the truth. The hotel had no choice. Either sell now or face bankruptcy. I need to use the restroom, Whitman said suddenly, looking pale. As he stood up, he knocked over his water glass. Sarah noticed his hands were shaking. After 2 hours of negotiations and paper signing, it was done. The Grand Palmer Hotel would have new owners by the end of the week. Palmer and Whitman left the conference room looking defeated. As soon as they were gone, Sarah's team broke into quiet celebration. Phase 1 complete, David said, grinning. Should I tell building maintenance to start preparing for the changes? Sarah nodded. Yes, but quietly. We don't want anyone knowing about the real changes until the perfect moment. She turned to Janet. Is everything ready for tomorrow's ownership transition meeting? Everything's prepared, Janet confirmed. All hotel staff have been told to attend. We've also invited those guests who were discriminated against. They'll be sitting in the back, out of sight, until you give the signal. Sarah looked at her watch, the same one she had been wearing the day Whitman turned her away. Make sure all the paperwork is finished today. Tomorrow morning, I want to walk into that hotel as its official owner. Marcus checked his security plans one last time. My team will be in place, though I don't think Whitman will try anything when he realizes who you are. He'll be too shocked. As her team packed up their materials, Sarah stayed in her chair, looking at the signed contracts. Years of business experience had taught her that success was the best revenge. But this wasn't just about revenge anymore. She was going to transform the Grand Palmer Hotel into something better, something that would help change the whole industry. Tomorrow would be a day Richard Whitman and Theodore Palmer II would never forget. But more importantly, it would be the beginning of real change. The grand ballroom of the Palmer Hotel was packed with staff members the next morning. Over 200 employees, from housekeepers to front desk workers to restaurant servers, sat in rows of chairs. At the front of the room, Richard Whitman stood nervously beside a podium, checking his watch every few minutes. When is the new owner coming? Someone whispered. Everyone had heard about the sale, but nobody knew who had bought the hotel. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the ballroom doors opened. Sarah Chen Williams walked in, wearing the same navy blue suit she had worn the day Whitman had turned her away. Behind her came her team, and behind them, quietly taking seats in the back, were 20 people, all previous guests who had faced discrimination at the hotel. The room fell silent. Whitman's face turned white. As he recognized her, he gripped the podium to steady himself. Good morning, everyone, Sarah said, walking to the front. For those who don't know me, my name is Sarah Chen Williams. 3 months ago, I tried to check into this hotel. Mr. Whitman here claimed my reservation was lost, while checking in several white guests without any problems. Whispers filled the room. Many staff members looked down, ashamed. They had seen this happen many times but felt powerless to stop it. But today, I'm not here as a rejected guest, Sarah continued, her voice strong and clear. I'm here as the new owner of the Grand Palmer Hotel. The whispers turned to guests. Whitman stumbled backward, almost falling. Janet quickly handed out folders to all employees. In these folders, you'll find details of the changes coming to this hotel, Sarah explained. First, every employee will receive discrimination and inclusion training. Second, we're implementing a new hiring policy to ensure our staff reflects the diversity of New York City. She paused, looking directly at the staff. I know many of you witnessed discrimination but felt you couldn't speak up. That changes today. We're setting up an anonymous reporting system. Any incident of discrimination will be investigated immediately. Then Sarah gestured to the people sitting in the back. They stood up one by one. These guests were all turned away from this hotel, just like I was. They're here today because they're joining our new community advisory board. They'll help ensure this hotel becomes a place that welcomes everyone. Tom, the young desk clerk who had been working the day Sarah was rejected, raised his hand. Mrs. Chen Williams? I'm sorry about what happened that day. I wanted to say something, but... Sarah smiled kindly at him. I remember you looked uncomfortable with Mr. Whitman's decision. That's why you're being promoted to assistant manager of guest relations. We need people who understand right from wrong. Whitman finally found his voice. You tricked us. You planned this all along. No, Mr. Whitman, Sarah replied calmly. You did this to yourself. Your discrimination and poor management nearly destroyed this historic hotel. I just stopped it from happening. She turned back to the staff. Those who choose to stay and embrace our new policies are welcome. Those who can't, she looked pointedly at Whitman, should leave now. The room burst into applause. Several employees were crying with relief. Others were hugging each other. Whitman walked out of the ballroom, his head down. After the meeting, Sarah walked through the hotel lobby, the same lobby where she had been humiliated. Now it was hers, and she had big plans for it. Janet approached her with a tablet showing messages already pouring in from news organizations wanting to cover the story. Should I set up some interviews? Janet asked. Sarah shook her head. Not yet. First, we have work to do. Let's show the world what real change looks like, not just talk about it. As she looked around at her new hotel, Sarah smiled. This wasn't just a victory for her. It was a step toward making sure nobody else would face the discrimination she had experienced. The real work was just beginning. 6 months had passed since Sarah took over the Grand Palmer Hotel. On a bright autumn morning, she walked through the lobby, smiling at the changes. The old, stuffy atmosphere was gone. Instead, the space buzzed with energy and warmth. At the front desk, a diverse team of staff members welcomed guests in multiple languages. Tom, now the head of guest relations, was training a new employee. The lobby's walls, once covered with only old paintings of white men, now displayed artwork from artists of all backgrounds. Mrs. Chen Williams, called Maria, one of the housekeepers who had been promoted to housekeeping supervisor. The new uniforms you ordered just arrived. Everyone loves them. They're so much more comfortable than the old ones. Sarah nodded, pleased. It was the small changes like this, along with better wages and benefits, that had improved staff morale. Happy employees meant happy guests. David rushed up to her with his tablet. Sarah, look at these numbers, he said excitedly. Our occupancy rate is at 95%. We're doing better than ever, even with room rates slightly lower than before. The hotel's success wasn't just about numbers. Sarah had made sure of that. Every week, she hosted free workshops in the hotel's conference rooms, teaching young people from underprivileged backgrounds about business and hospitality. 3 of those students were now working at the hotel part-time while attending college on scholarships she had created. As she walked through the hotel restaurant, she saw guests from all over the world enjoying breakfast. The menu now included dishes from many cultures, and the restaurant had become one of New York's most popular breakfast spots. The food critics are coming next week, Janet reminded her, appearing with her usual perfect timing. They're doing a story about how we transformed the restaurant. Oh, and the Times wants to interview you about the hotel's turnaround. Sarah checked the hotel's new mobile app on her phone. It showed real-time updates about hotel operations. Guest reviews were overwhelmingly positive, with many praising the welcoming atmosphere and excellent service. In the ballroom, preparations were underway for that evening's event, a conference for minority business owners. The same ballroom where she had revealed herself as the owner 6 months ago was now regularly used for diversity and inclusion events. "Remember that couple that was turned away last year?" Marcus asked, walking beside her. "They came back last week for their wedding. Said they chose us specifically because of our changes." The hotel's success had caught the attention of the whole hospitality industry. Other hotels were now copying their inclusive policies and training programs. Sarah had even started consulting with other businesses about how to become more welcoming to all guests. Walking into her office, Richard Whitman's old office, Sarah sat down to review the day's reports. The old wooden desk had been replaced with a modern glass one, symbolizing the hotel's transparency and new beginning. On her wall hung photos of her with various team members celebrating birthdays, achievements, and promotions. Next to these was a framed copy of the hotel's new mission statement: "Welcome all, serve all, respect all." Janet brought in the afternoon mail. "The applications for next year's scholarship program have started arriving," she said, placing a stack of envelopes on the desk. "And 3 more hotels have asked about our training program." Sarah picked up one of the scholarship applications. "Make sure we increase the number of scholarships this year," she said, "and set up meetings with those hotels. The more businesses that change, the better." Looking out her office window at the busy New York street below, Sarah thought about how far they'd come. The hotel that had once turned her away was now a symbol of positive change in the industry. Her phone buzzed with a message. Their latest hiring round had just finished. Among the new hires was Richard Whitman's niece, who had applied without mentioning their relationship. Sarah smiled, knowing that real change sometimes came in unexpected ways. The Grand Palmer Hotel wasn't just a business success story anymore. It was proof that doing the right thing could also be good for business. 1 year after Sarah bought the Grand Palmer Hotel, she stood on its rooftop garden, a new addition she had created for guests and staff to enjoy. The garden had become a popular spot, with its beautiful flowers and comfortable seating areas. As the sun set over Manhattan, she watched a young black girl practicing her speech for tomorrow's event. The girl, Destiny Johnson, was 16 and the first recipient of the hotel's Future Leaders Scholarship. She would speak at tomorrow's ceremony marking the hotel's 1-year transformation anniversary. Over 500 people would attend, including many hotel owners from around the world. "You've really started something big," Janet said, joining Sarah at the railing. She handed Sarah a newspaper. The headline read, "Grand Palmer Hotel sets new industry standards. 50 hotels join Inclusive Hospitality Initiative." Sarah smiled, remembering how different things had been a year ago. The hotel had just won several awards, including Best Workplace and Most Inclusive Luxury Hotel. But more important than the awards were the real changes happening in people's lives. Just then, Tom came up to the roof. "Mrs. Chin Williams, you need to see this," he said, holding his tablet. Richard Whitman posted something online. Sarah read Whitman's public message. "After a year of watching the Grand Palmer Hotel's success, I must admit I was wrong. My prejudices hurt people and nearly destroyed a great hotel. I'm now taking classes on diversity and inclusion, hoping to learn from my mistakes." As if on cue, David arrived with more news. "Our profits are up 60% from last year," he reported. "But here's the best part. 20 former guests who faced discrimination have become regular customers. They say they keep coming back because we proved change is possible." The rooftop door opened again. A group of hotel staff members came out, carrying a surprise: a large cake decorated with the hotel's new logo. They had organized a small celebration for Sarah. Maria, now the head of housekeeping, spoke for the group. "We wanted to thank you," she said, "not just for the better jobs and pay, but for showing us that one person can make a real difference." Sarah looked at her team. People of all backgrounds working together, supporting each other. The hotel now had the most diverse staff of any luxury hotel in New York and the highest employee satisfaction rates. Tomorrow's ceremony isn't just about our success, Sarah said, addressing everyone. It's about proving that inclusivity and excellence go hand in hand. When you welcome everyone, everyone wins. Just then, Destiny came over with her speech notes. Mrs. Chen Williams, I changed the ending of my speech. I want to tell everyone how your story inspired me to start my own business club at school. Sarah hugged the young girl. This was her real legacy, inspiring the next generation to dream bigger and break down barriers. Later that evening, as the staff enjoyed the cake, Sarah walked to her favorite spot on the roof. From there, she could see the hotel's new sign glowing in the twilight. Below it was their motto, "Welcome all, serve all, respect all." Marcus joined her, holding up his phone. The video of our training program just went viral, he said. Hotels in Europe and Asia are asking to use it. You've started a global movement. Sarah thought about everything that had happened since that day. She was turned away from the hotel. What had started as a response to discrimination had become something much bigger, a blueprint for positive change in the entire industry. You know what the best part is? Janet asked, coming to stand beside her. Every time someone walks into this hotel and feels truly welcome, maybe for the first time in their lives, they take that feeling with them. They start expecting better, demanding better. Sarah nodded, watching the city lights come on. The Grand Palmer Hotel was no longer just a place to stay. It had become a symbol of what was possible when someone refused to accept discrimination and instead chose to create change. As night fell over New York, the rooftop garden glowed with soft lights, and laughter filled the air. The hotel that had once turned people away now stood as a beacon of welcome, its legacy growing stronger with each passing day.